Hey everybody, what's up? Time for the eagerly anticipated Unit 2 review video 2, where we are going to discuss the second half of the slides, which is the slides about loops. Forgive me for being a day late. One thing before we move on any further, a reminder, if you learn anything in this class, you need to learn one thing. Start throwing things away. You have too much stuff. This house is full of 20 years of collected junk and towels and hats and glasses from Atlantic City, and you don't need all of this stuff. Minimalist. You don't need all this junk. Just now, I'm getting back. I'm moving this weekend, and just now I think I'm getting down to the nitty gritty, and it's just furniture, and it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. Do I look frazzled? It's absolutely miserable. All right, enough complaining. I need to do this video. You need to learn about loops because the unit's going to end in a week, but that's okay. We are going to go over some interesting stuff because what I always say when I get to this point is that loops is the point where you can actually start doing some fun stuff and you can actually start solving some problems. And later in the week, hopefully, I don't just shoot you to one of the old videos, but I might because I take the apartment Thursday, and then I have to move Nicky Knacks on Friday, and then the movers come here Saturday, and blah, blah, blah. I don't know when I'm going to have time to do it, but maybe I'm going to sit down, because I actually like this video where I do the Project Euler problem, and we start doing that, because now you're going to have, you have lists, you're going to have loops and iteration, and you're going to have simple data and if statements to make decisions, and you're going to have the tools to actually start doing some cool stuff. So I think the Euler is good for that, but like I usually do, I am getting away from what we are here for, which is loops. I have to wipe the beard every time I have coffee now because you see, there's a very, very thin line between full beard and look like a homeless person. And this beard is approaching homeless quickly. It may be at homeless. I may not be objective anymore, and it may be a homeless person's beard at this point. So it needs to be trimmed. Again, first I told you about moving, now I'm talking about the beard. You need to see some loops. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some code I already whipped up, which isn't a lot. What I did was I made a list, and as you can see, I called it my list. And I just put 5 items in there, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay? So what I'm going to do at first is the very simplest loop that we can do, a for loop. I'm just going to say for, and then I'm going to say I. Now, don't ask me why we use I, but in computer science, when we do loops, that loop that's always going to be the number that gets incremented is either I or J or K. It comes from mathematics, like I say in the files, but I'm not sure why they did this. So I'm going to say for I in, and then I'm just going to say my list. Okay? Then I'm going to do a colon, and I'm going to start a block. You can see the for and the in are orange because they are keywords. Okay? You're going to understand what we could do with that in a little bit later. So now I've said for I in my list. So for every single item in my list, we're going to make it equal to I, and we're going to do something. Now that something is anything we want to do. So I'm just going to print I at first, and we'll print all of the numbers in the list. So what will happen is for I in my list, it'll read 2, it'll print 2. Then it'll read 4, it'll print 4. So it should print the whole list down in a line. At least I hope so. And it does. Okay? So basically, you can do anything with that list. Now, I don't want you to think that you are limited to only one line, because you're not. Let's print, after we do that, the square of I. So what you're going to get is you're going to get 2, and then 4, and then 4, and then 16, and then 6, and then 36 along down the line. So that's a pretty good one. The number, it's square. The number, it's square. The number, it's square. And we did that for every item in the list. So you can have a block of code. You don't have to have just one simple command there. You can do as many different things as you want. Okay? But a lot of people look at this and they go, yeah, well, that's kind of different because I'm used to a Java or a C++. When, first of all, if Python is your first language, forget what I'm about to say. Don't listen. Because other languages kind of do loops different. You kind of set up a variable, and then you set up a condition, and then you set up an increment, and it's kind of done in a weird way. So a lot of people who have used C++ or Java or some other language, they're probably saying, oh, that's not the way I'm used to things. What if I just want a regular loop that goes from 1 to 10. You know, do I have to load all the numbers in a list? Well, kind of, yeah. When we use Python, we use a thing called the range function. You're going to learn later. It's not really a function, but that's later. That can give you lists of numbers. So at the end of the day, we're still going to be iterating over just a list, but you're going to create the list of numbers you want. So let's say I want a list from 1 to 10. Okay? So I'm going to say I'm going to say for I in, and then I'll say range. You can see it's purple because it's a function. It's really a general. Where am I going to start? I'll start with the number 1. And then, because this is an interval in Python, I'm going to give it the first thing I don't want. Okay? And then, what's my increment? I'm going to increment by 1. Colon, boom. Print. Yes. Print I. All right, so that range is going to give me the numbers 1 through 10, because it's 1 less than 11. 11 is the first thing I don't want. And it's going to increment by 1 every time it goes through. So I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. Okay? At least I hope so. Yeah, right. That's confusing. So let's start to do this. And start blocking off our code. All right. So now when we rerun, you see we get 1 through 10. Okay? But what you're going to learn about range is that it has a default behavior. You can have range assume it's going to start somewhere, but it doesn't start at 1. It starts at 0. Okay? And here, that 1 is the default. So if we ran this, you see it goes 0 through 10. Okay? So whatever you put here for the range, let's say we put 10, is going to be 1 more than you get. So what I always tell people is you're going to get 10 numbers. All right? Because that's what you get. 0 through 9 is 10 digits. All right? But think of it as an interval. The first thing you don't want is what's going to show up. Now, I call 0 and 1 a default, and the reason I do that is this. You see that 0 through 9? I don't need the 0 and I don't need the 1. And when I rerun things, I still get 0 through 9. Okay? If I wanted to go all the way up to 20, I do 21 because it's the first thing I don't want. So I rerun and I got 0 through 20. Okay? Now, a lot of times you don't want the 0. Yes, us computer scientists start counting at 0, but your normal average everyday people, they're starting at 1. So you could just do that and say 1 to 21. Okay? And then you will get 1 to 20. If I want to do every second number, I could do an increment of 2. That way, when I run it, I get 1, 3, I get the odds. Okay? What do I do if I want the evens? Start at 2. Okay? So, in order to do loops, sometimes you want to get some facility with the range function so you know how to create lists of numbers. Because at the end of the day, with Python, you're just going to iterate over lists. Okay? Now. I always do that. I yell now. Now. Let's move on. Now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little homework assignment. Because I now have simple variables and data. I have ifs. I have Boolean algebra. I have loops. I have lists. I have all kinds of tools that I can use. So if somebody gave me a real question, like, how many of the, I don't even know the answer to this. I'm trying to think of what I usually do. How many of the squares from the numbers 1 to 300, so you take the squares of all those numbers, how many of those squares are greater than 50,000? Okay? Let's take a problem like that. So I've got the numbers from 1 to 300. How many of those numbers squared are greater than 50,000? Oh, no idea. So the first thing I'm going to do is I figure, let me get a list of the numbers 1 through 300. Okay? That might help a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say for I in range. I'm going to start at 1. I'm going to go to 301 because it's the first thing I don't want. And just for S and G, I'm going to print it. Okay? So when I print that, I'm going to guess I started at 1, and I get the first 300 numbers. That's great, but I don't want to just print them. I want to actually use them. So why don't I create a list called 3H list, and I'll make it blank. And then what I'm going to do when I come here is I'm going to say 3H list dot append, and I'm going to add I to my list. Okay, so now I'm creating a list, and you're going to see why in a second. So now I'm just going to print my list. 3H list, is that what I called it? Yes, it is. So now when I run it, it gives me a list. You can see how the bracket starts there and the bracket ends here, and it goes from 1, and it gives me all the numbers down to 300. That's a nice little Pythonic thing to do. I took my numbers and I threw them in a list, because now I can do things with that list. What am I going to do with that list? I can iterate over it. Let's say I'm going to create a list called the squares, but you can't guess what I'm going to do with that. And then I'm going to say for I in 3H list. So that's the list of 1 to 300. Okay. What am I going to do with that? I'm going to say the squares dot append. Remember, that adds to a list I. But I don't want I want the square. So I'm going to take I and square it and then add it to my list. Okay? You following along? If you're not, it's YouTube. Go back and watch it again. Alright, so now I'm going to print the squares. And what's going to happen? It's going to print my 300, and then it's going to print the squares. Look at that. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. It's a good thing those top ones are there, because I don't know if these are squares or not. But when you get to the end, you have a pretty good idea that 90,000 is a square. It's 300 times 300. So you know you're in good shape right there. Okay, so now I'm a little bit further along in my problem, because I now have a list, the squares, that has all of the squares from 1 to 300. But what was our homework assignment, remember? Our homework assignment was that we wanted to find the numbers that were greater than 50,000. Okay? So, what am I going to do now? I'm going to jump into a loop. So I'll say for I in, and I'll say the squares, and then I'll go into a loop. And what do I want to do with this loop? I'm going to say if I is greater than 50,000, what am I going to do? I'm going to print I, comma. Do I want to do that? For I in the squares. There's another thing I can do, because I want to know what the number was. I could go grab the square root, I guess, and it'll tell me exactly what number it was in the sequence. Or I could do it that way. Well, let's do this first. Let's print I like that and see what we get. All right, where did I start? I started at 5176, so greater than 50,000, and I got to the end, which is 90,000, which is good, but there's a couple of things missing here. What, like I was talking about before, what if I want to know how many I have, what the number is? What if I want to count them? Well, there's an easy way to count them, and it's called putting in a counter, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm going to grab a variable called C, not very descriptive, and I'm going to make it equal to 0. Okay? So then, when I'm here in my loop, I'm going to say when I is greater than 50,000, I'm going to print it, but I'm also going to do what's called click my counter. And I'm going to add 1 to the variable C by saying C equals C plus 1. So if C is 0, that'll make it 1. If C is 7, that'll make it 8. It just adds 1 to it. Okay? So now I'm going to have a variable called C. When I'm done with my loop, I can print C. Okay? Now there's a better way to do this. We're going to learn about it in 2 seconds, but let's run this. So now I get it, and it says 77. Well, that's pretty good. Okay? Now, there's a whole other way we can do this, and that's by doing this. I am going to make the counter click the first thing I do when I get in here. Okay? So then that variable is up to date, and I can just add it to the print line. So next to the number that I print will be the number it is. Look at that. So it says 77 is 90,000, but if I want to go look at what the first one was, 5076, and now this one, 41, is 69,696 and all that. Okay? So I can take that counter and click it first and then print it out so we know how many values there are. So we already answered our homework question because there are 77 of the 300 squares are greater than 50,000. But one more little trick in our bag of tricks. What if I'm going to create a variable called a, want to add all those numbers together? What would I do then? I'm going to say a equals a plus, pretty similar so far, but what do I want to add? Do I want to add 1? No, that's a counter. I want to add the number itself. So I'm going to add I. Okay? So the first time through, a is going to be 0, but it's going to add I to it. All right? So the first thing it's going to read is 5176, and it's going to add all the numbers as it goes along. As a matter of fact, we're going to print them out as we go along. So I have the CIA there. So now when we run it, I can see that I have 77 that are greater than 50,000. The last one is 90,000, and that 5,323,000 whatever is the sum of the whole kit and caboodle. Okay? So that's pretty cool, and that's as, easy as it sounds. That's the beginnings of data science. We're looking over a bunch of numbers. 300 is incredibly minuscule. With computer programming, we could look at millions of numbers. And we're checking it for criteria. At first, we created a list. Then we manipulated that list and saved the results when we got the squares. Then we went through the squares and we looked for something, whether it was greater than 50,000. And all of the numbers that met that criteria, we put them in their own list. Okay? I'm just printing them right here. But if I wanted to, I could create a blank list and we could save them all in a list. So I would have that list saved. Okay? As you should know by now, don't start typing because I am going to save all of this for you. And I'm going to put it up in the resources. Okay? We are going to go over 3 more things. 3 more things really quickly. Because I'm shot as usual. It's just been a long day. It's a long story, but the movers that were going to move me canceled. It's a family business, and they just had a baby. So I was like, oh, congratulations, that's wonderful, and stuff like that. Now I have nobody to move my junk on Saturday. So this morning, I feverishly start calling moving companies. And I found a bunch, actually Edison Movers. And I said, hey, can you move on Saturday? And they said, yes, but the only window we have is 9 in the morning till 12 noon. I'm not taking that much stuff with me. So I said, okay, that sounds great. Come at 9. Problem is, the place where I'm going only has an elevator, to get things up and down, and you have to schedule that elevator. So I was scheduled to use it in the afternoon. All of a sudden, I'm showing up in the morning. So I had to call the place and make sure that I could get, do not be afraid. That is only my dryer. I had to make sure I could get the elevator. But it turns out they made some calls and they switched with some people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting the elevator. So I was able to move. So I finally got movers. Isn't that bizarre? 3 days before. God bless Edison Movers, man. Viva that. I hope this should be like Yelp. Edison, viva la Edison Movers, man. They worked with me and they got me somebody out here to help me with my stuff, and God bless them. Because otherwise I would be shot. I wouldn't know what I'm going to do. I'm already in bad shape. I got to put together clothes for Goodwill. I'm wasting time. All right. 3 things to do. A couple of things I want you to see. This one is kind of fun. For I in, I'm going to say range. I'm going to start at 1, and I'm going to go to 5. So I'll go to 6 because 5 is... No, actually, you know what? I'll do 5. So I get 5 things, and I'll get 0 through 4. So let me just do 5. 0 through 4 is 5. 5 is fine. Okay, now, watch this. For J in range, let's do 3. So I'll get 0, 1, and 2. I'm going to do that. Okay? Actually, I think how I usually do it is this. First thing I'm going to do is print outer. And then when I'm in here, print outer, print I, comma, J. Now, it won't know what J is yet, so I'm going to make J equal to 0 up here. So it'll print a 0 at first. Then, here, I'm going to say print inner. You'll see why in a second. And then I'm going to do the same as above. I'm going to print I, comma, J. Okay? Look at that little piece of code right there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it j, and it's going to be 0. Why is this delete not working? That scares me. That's back. Okay, thank you. So j equal to 0. For I in range 5. So I got a loop. It's going to go 5 times, 0 through 4. I'm going to print outer every time it does, and then I'm going to print I and j. But then inside that loop, I'm going to have another loop. Okay? These are called inner loops. I can run a loop within a loop, and you will see the results right now. Okay? Actually, I don't want to do that. I, J. Get rid of that line right there, because you don't really need to do it like that. And then inner, comma, I, comma, J. Like that. And then get rid of that line. This is going to look a lot neater. Forgive me for the confusion. There we go. So I run that outer loop, okay, and I get 0 and 0. So I'm inside this loop with I equal to 0, as you can see, because it prints it 3 times. See that inner one? And you can see 1, 0, 1, 2. And then the outer loop goes and runs again. So what happens is this runs, and it does it 3 times, and then it goes back to the beginning. It grabs 1. It just ran with 0, so now it grabs 1, and it goes and it does it again. So you can see 0, 1, 2, 2. Why does it do? Oh, because of the outer. So I do the outer loop, then I go 0, 1, 2, do the outer loop. See, it increments 1, 0, 1, 2. Do the outer loop, increments 1, 0, 1, 2, and it goes down the line. All right? That looks kind of confusing right there, the way it is done, but inner loops is the way we navigate through table data. Okay? Think of the outside loop as a row, and think of the inner loop as a column. So if you want to go to the 5th row and the 7th spot, well, then you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, in the inner. And that's going to bring you to the right spot in your table data. So I always show people this in the beginning, not to confuse you or to show you any tricks or anything like that, but because it's how we navigate tables and how you're going to see in the future you might have data in a table structure. This is how you get to it, all right? Back in the dinosaur days when I learned all this stuff, we used to call them multi-dimensional arrays because this has kind of 2 dimensions, a height and a width. But right now in a Python context, we just call it a list within a list. Like when we did our list examples, you see I could keep a list in there. This is just a list within a list. Okay, so that's a loop within a loop right there. And that's how we would navigate through a list of lists. I'll say that 10 times fast. All right, so that's an inner loop. I would know this because a question like this may appear on the quiz. Yes? Yes? You've been warned. All right, so there's 2 more things we got to look at. Now, this is kind of interesting, this next thing. It's all interesting. Viva la Python. All right, we've been doing ranges, right? 0 to 10, 1 to 10, 0 to 20, 1 to 301, so I could get 300. These are all lengths that we know beforehand, okay? It's a definite number. We call them definite loops. When I go into it with that range command, I know it's going to go 10 times. I know it's going to go 20 times. What can we do if we want to create a loop and we don't know when it's going to end? It's indefinite. And you might say, that sounds a little weird, and it does, but we don't want it to end at a certain number. We want it to end when we meet a certain condition, where a number gets to a certain height, or a word equals something, or when blah, 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 okay? We can do that. We're going to set up a context where we keep looping while something is true. So we're going to do something called a while loop, okay? I'm going to set something up. I'm going to say C equal to, and I'll just say Y. And then I will say while, and you can see that idle makes it orange, because it's a keyword. And then I'll say while C is equal to Y, which it is because we just said it that, then I am going to have a loop. And I'm going to print in the loop. And then I'm going to say Y assign, and I don't want int, I want input. I'll say, do you want to continue? Question mark, colon, and end it like that. Actually, give me a space so it looks better. Okay, so then I'm going to answer that question. I didn't want to make it Y. I have Y on the brain. I want to make it C. Okay, so if I want to continue, I'll say Y. It'll go to the top of the loop, and is C equivalent to Y? It is if I put Y there, and I could do that loop as many times as I want. If I don't want to do it, I can put in an N, or frankly a Z, or anything I want that's not a Y, and the loop will end. So how do I know what the loop is ended? I'm going to print the end. Okay? So now when I run this little piece of code right here, the C is a Y because I said it that way. So then in my loop, I'll say while C is equivalent to Y, which it is, it'll print in the loop and then ask me for another letter. Now, as long as I give it Y, it'll keep running. Because as long as this condition is true, this loop will keep running. But when I give it something new, it'll jump out of the loop, and the last command in the program is print the end. Let's see if it works. Do I want to continue? I do. I do. I will continue. What is that, 4 times? So I'll say no. And then it prints the end. Okay? So now I'm going to run it again. Do you want to continue? Yes. Yes. But now I'll say no. And it ends. Look. That's the same code there, right? But up here it ran 5 times. And up here it ran 3 times. Because we control it. We know when we're going to give it an end. So that's what we call an indefinite loop. Now, this example is good because it's not only what we call an indefinite loop, but it's also what's called an interactive loop, because we ask a question inside of the loop and allow the user to change a variable. So it's interactive. The user is controlling how many times it goes. Okay? It's not just some random thing that we're checking. We're not going to check the weather. If you want to, you can look up the weather on the internet, and we can literally run that loop until it's 85 degrees out. There's nothing stopping us now. With the internet, it's wonderful. You can go out and look for any data point. All right? You can, ready for this? We could do a while loop until the Mets are over 500. All right? Which will probably be a long time. That loop may be running until next April. All right? So, and that's only if they go 1-0 on opening day. So, there's a bunch of things we can do with indefinite loops. You've got to set that value and then sit and wait for it. In this case, it was interactive. So we were able to reset it and do what we wanted. Okay, so those are while loops. While loops look at a condition. Now, you can always do a definite loop with a while, because I could say, well, I could do something like this. I'll do it for you. I could say while C is less than 10. Okay, C equals 1. We'll change it from a string. And then I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to comment it out because I want you to see it when I save the code for you. And now what I'll do is I'll say C equals C plus 1. So I'll do a counter. So it'll say in the loop, go to the top, in the loop, but I'm adding 1 to C. So it'll run, right, 1, 2, because I set it at 1, all the way until it gets to 10. And then it'll say, is 10 less than 10? And that's no. And then it'll print the end. So I should get 1 through 9, and then it should drop. Let's see what we get. Oh, it didn't put out the number. Dun, 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 dun. All right, the number's going to be 1 behind because I am going to print it before the increment. So the number should be, will it be 1 twice? No, it'll be 1, increment 2. All right, we'll get the right numbers there. Watch. We get 1 through 9. Okay? And then once it hit 9, it incremented to 10. It went up to the top. Is it less than 10? No, it is 10. So we skip right to the bottom and it prints the end. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to leave this like this. So remember, if you want the old way to work, well, you know what? I'm going to go make it the old way. Because that's more important. Let me put your character back there. Let me put your character back there. Let me take that away. And now we're back to yes, yes, of course, yes. And then we do that. Okay? All right. You must be all looped out. I'm getting all looped out. I'm getting all loopy. So I'm going to leave that there. Man, we got a lot of code. A lot of code. But there's one more thing I want to show you. Okay? This is a special kind of loop called a Sentinel Loop. Okay? I have a list. I'm going to call it my other list. And I'm going to make it equal to, ready, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, comma, 999, 3, 5, 8, doesn't matter. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, so that is my list. I want to create something called a Sentinel Loop. And what a Sentinel Loop is go along like a regular loop until you hit a certain value. And then when you hit that certain value, stop and don't do any more. Okay? Looking at my list, you can probably guess what we're going to do here. I'm going to create a loop that does something. Probably adds the number together. I'll accumulate them. And I'm going to stop when I hit that 999. So if I were going to do a regular one, I would say my other list. For I and my other list, I would say A equals A plus I. It behooves me to define A first. If you don't define A, you'll find out that Python blows up if you refer to a variable that doesn't exist. And when you do A plus I, it'll say, what the hell is A? All right? Yeah, maybe we'll run it later and I'll blow it up. All right, so then I'll print I. Okay? So if I do this and I run it, I print the list. Okay? I never print A, though. Let me print A at the end. Print A. All right, so if you add all those numbers up, you get 1,057, which makes sense because that's about 1,000, and then you add everything else. 50. All right? Now, what if I want to write that loop? So I read numbers until it hits 999, and then I stop. And I print that accumulator with just 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 6 is 12, plus 8 is 20, plus 10 is 30, plus that is 42. Oh, that's the answer to the question of the universe there. We are going to get 42 if we stop when we hit 999. How can we make that happen? I don't expect you to know. You're learning. I'm the one who has to do it. I'm the one who has to remember how to do this stuff. So what am I going to do? I'm going to leave that A plus A there. First thing I'm going to do is I have the first time through the loop for I and my other list. So what do I want to do? Well, I want to make sure I isn't the Sentinel. For all I know, it's the first thing in the list, right? I mean, I'm not doing that particular list. I'm coming up with a general solution. You should remember that for your homeworks. Don't solve the problem in front of you. Why we need a general solution that's going to solve the problem for any list we put out there. So I'm looking for 999. So I can say, if I is equivalent to 999, what do I want to do? Okay? What do I want to do? If I hit the Sentinel, I want to get out of there. I don't want to add anything to the list, right? How do I do that? You're going to see there's a keyword in Python called break. Okay? Don't need anything after it. And that's going to knock you out of the loop. All right? You'll see that in a second because we're going to change things around. Then I'm going to do an else. And I'm going to say else, add it to the accumulator. Okay? Because if it's not the Sentinel, then I want to add it to the accumulator. And if I hit the Sentinel, I'm going to hit that break, and I'm going to get out of Dodge. Okay? Now, I'm not going to... Am I going to print it? I'm going to print it. I'll print it in the loop. And then here, I'll do a string literal in front of this. And I'll say the sum is colon and that comma A. Okay? So that I'm out of the loop, as you can see, because I'm not indented. Right? I'm not indented there. I'm indented there, but that's an if, so I got to be indented again. And then my else matches my if, indented, indented. So these are all 8. These are all 4. Okay? And then when I'm completely out of the loop, I'm going to print the sum. So if the programming gods are with us, I'm going to jump into this loop. And the first thing I read is going to be 2. Is 2 equivalent to 999? It is not. So I'm going to run the else, and I'm going to add it to the accumulator. And I'm going to do that for everything I get to that's not 9999. Until I get to 9999, I don't want to add that to the accumulator. So I say if I equivalent to 999, which it is true, then I'm going to break. And that's going to jump me out of the loop. And when it jumps me out of the loop, then I can print. Okay? Break breaks me out of the for loop. It doesn't break me out of the if else. All right? It's going to break me out of the for loop. So I'm not going to go grab another number. Break doesn't break you out of an if-else structure. Break gets you out of a for loop, even though it's 8 deep and not just 4 deep for that for. All right? So if I'm correct. We're going to run this, and we're going to get 42. Please work. The sum is 42. And we printed everything up to 999. Now you might be saying, yeah, nice trick. How do I know that it works there? Blah, 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 blah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add, what can I add to 42? 58? Will that convince you? Will that pep you up, chum? So now if we run this again, A should be 100. Okay? I'm going to show you. I'm going to run, and it is. It's 100. Okay? Because anything before that Sentinel is going to come up. If I put 999 right there, and it's the first thing, well, then I'm going to get some zeros because I hit the Sentinel first thing. But usually that doesn't happen. Okay? Keep that in mind. So I'm going to do all of these things until I hit a certain value. That certain value is called a Sentinel, and a construct like this is called a Sentinel Loop. It's where you go through and you do something in your loop until you hit a certain value. Once you hit that value, you're like, I'm done. This is it. I'm out of here. And then you get out of here. All right? All right. So that's a Sentinel Loop. So this might be a very, very interesting finale. There's a lot of code there. I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it. Look at this craziness. Took a while to run. Do I want yes, 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 no. And then I'm going to end. Pretty snazzy. Look at all this. Uh-oh, this could get 40 miles of bad road here. All right. We started and we knew that iteration is just iterating over a list. It's just taking the list and doing the same thing for every single item in that list, okay? And then we learned if we want to iterate over lists of numbers, we can use the range function. It's really a generator, the range function, to create lists of numbers that we can iterate over. So then after we did that, we did our own little homework assignment. And when we did our own little homework assignment, we found out that I can use range to create a list of the first 300 numbers. And then I can take those 300 numbers and I can square them and create a new list called the squares. My OCD will not allow these spaces. So now I have the squares, and I can create this loop right here where I check to see which ones are over 50,000. I count them and I add them, okay? And then I print them out. Remember, this code will be up in the resources for you to look at. Then we look at inner loops so that I can do a loop within a loop, okay? And that's the way that we navigate tabular data. Then we have an indefinite loop, okay, where I don't know how long it's going to be because I can give it Y's forever, all right? Or I could wait for the Mets to actually win. Oh, it'll get old. Like me, it'll get old and bitter before it ends because the Mets will drive you to drink more than coffee. So the last thing we do is what's called a Sentinel Loop, where you look for a certain value, and if you find it, you end the list, and you end the list with the keyword break. You can see, lovely, helpful idle makes it orange. Okay? All right, good, good, good. All right, announcements. You have probably guessed already, because it's Tuesday night, that we don't have class on Tuesday, the 12th. We have class on Tuesday, the 19th. That is going to be the day after the unit ends, because remember, I'm pushing the unit a day, because I don't want you to have to take a quiz on Father's Day. I'm probably going to open it up at 8 o'clock that night to give you extra time with it. But I'm not going to, there's no way. I'm not going to make you do that on Father's Day. We'll close the unit on Monday, and then we'll open up Unit 2, sometime on Tuesday, the day we have class, because we have class on the 19th. Keep doing what you're doing. I populated the grade book today, and everybody's doing great. So that's a good thing. I should be sending out, like I told you, the next couple of days are rough for me. Thursday, I take the apartment. Friday, I move knicky-knack stuff in and out. Saturday is the big furniture move. I'll send you your grades somehow. Somehow I'll get it done. Somehow I'll find like an hour to shoot you all your grades. You all did great, so you got no worries. And I'll figure out a time to do it, and I'll get it to you before the end of the unit, because I always promise to get you unit grades before the end of the unit. It's a tight squeeze in the summertime, but I'll still keep the promise, hopefully. All right? Keep doing what you're doing. Remember, I'm dropping this video tonight, Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock already. And I'm going to drop the assignments tonight too, so you'll have a full week to tool around with the assignments. Remember, it's good to get the assignments in on time, but I take them late. If it's a day late, I take a point. If it's 2 days late, I take 2 points. After that, don't bother. All right? So, and I always tell Kit to wait a couple days before she grades assignments, because I give people the chance to hand it in if they're going to hand it in. So just know that. That said, I don't want you to do that if you don't have to. A word to the wise. Next Monday is what? 15th is Friday, so 16, 17, 18. It's the 18th. On Friday night, the 15th, I want those forum posts. You have to have the forum posts in 3 days before the end of the unit. So Friday night's the deadline on that for the forum posts, yeah? If they come in after midnight on Friday, I'm going to ding you a point. If they're less than half a page, 12-point font, Microsoft Word, cut and paste, stick it in there and look. Real simple, 10 seconds. But if it's not half a page, I'm going to ding you a point, all right? Low-hanging fruit. At the end of the day, these points matter. Believe me, all right? It's like there's 300 total points, right? At the end of the day, if you want an A, you got to have, what, 93%? So what's that, 277 points? You've only got 23 points to play around with if you want to get an A. So you got to pay attention to these things. You got to make sure you do well on the quizzes. You got to make sure you do all the assignments and you don't miss any. Don't miss a quiz because there's no makeups for quiz, all right? All these little points, it's a lot. This course is about keeping up with it and doing you can't like take a week and a half off. You'll be screwed, right? Little bit every day, little bit every day, little bit every day. And what it does is it rewards the little bit every day people, because it's not, yeah, the midterm and the final project are really big, but you need the nicky-knack everyday stuff in order to do well. And all of you are doing well so far, so it's not like I have to say anything. But I'm just telling you. I'm just getting on the soapbox for a little bit. All right? Everybody's doing great. By now, you should know me. I'm going to send you announcements every day. I'm going to send you announcements and announcements and announcements. I want, and you know this deal because we talked about it, it's a hybrid course, but I want to create a feeling of stability. I don't want you ever to not know when a deadline is. I don't want you ever not to know what's going on. Ask questions. Send me email. Put them in the forums. I want you to feel like it's there's stability and you know when everything's going to happen and nothing jumps up and grabs you by surprise. All right? All right. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to try as best I can to get you those grades. I'm going to try as best I can to take 15 minutes and do that Euler video because I like the Euler video. I'll find it. Hopefully I'll find a way to do it. I'll bet you any amount of money Friday night I'm like super exhausted and I just take a shower and I'm in shock, basically. Someone should throw a blanket over me. And maybe I'll just fire up Camtasia and just do it. And I'll just do it. Because I like it. It's good. I shouldn't have to miss my fun stuff because I have to move this awful, awful serial killer house. I'm breaking up with my house. 19 years. 19 years. I'm ending a 19-year relationship with my house and it's not going well. It wouldn't end if it didn't go crazy. So 2 more days. Hopefully it doesn't collapse on me. Just don't listen to this. I'm just kidding. I'm not doing some shitty. All right. I'm getting out of here. But you be good. And I'll be in touch in a couple of days. All right? All right. Be good. Bye.